Hi, I'm Gary from Martin Lynch and Sons here in Staines, and today I have John Hudson with me, G4ABQ, who's going to talk us through the SDR Play RSP range and the Sdr Uno software. So without further ado, I'll pass it over to John. So welcome, John.
Okay, well, thanks very much, Gary, and it's really great to be invited along today. Obviously, it's not the same as being up in Newark as we would be.
No, it's quite interesting.
Really appreciate the chance to at least reach out in this way and talk through the latest news from SDR Play. Also, for those who don't know us, a little bit of our background. I'm John, and I do the sales and marketing, one of the core founding team that set up some 6 years ago. So I'm going to just share my screen with you and just talk through the history and the products. So we actually, started 6 years ago, and we're a joint venture supported by the chip company Myrix, and a lot of the other guys in the company have a background with Myrix. Myrix really pioneered SDR receiver technology about 10 years ago, when a lot of high-end cell phones needed to also have radio reception, whether for broadcast reception. You had long wave in the UK and Japan. They were using VHF, UHF to transmit terrestrial TV, and Japanese commuters would be watching broadcast TV on their phones. And so it was that some very high-spec silicon technology was developed, which actually came to the notice of the amateur community, who were starting to use the cheaper dongles for receiving whole chunks of spectrum, starting mostly up at VHF. And the idea came about, why can't we come up with something that really approaches the performance of the receive side of a regular communications receiver, and embed our technology into a box that could be added to a computer to give that capability, along with the visual impact that an SDR gives you, all for an affordable price. And that was the concept of the original RSP. We called it the radio spectrum processor, just to set it apart from those dongles, which are a very natural way to get started. But once you want to get serious, then we wanted to have something there that people could migrate to. So there's 7 of us. We're based in the UK. The manufacturing is also in the UK. So we manufacture in Peterborough and Hartlepool, and we have a registered office down in Hampshire, but we're all working from our own homes, and our hardware guy, Ian, he has his own lab. We have Andy, many will know as a software architect, and the other guys that you probably see quite a bit on our videos of is Mike, KD2KOG over in Florida, and Steve, KI5 ENW in Dallas, Texas. Because actually the American market is obviously a big market for us, and we have a good partnership over there, as we do with Martin Lynch here in the UK. So just for those who maybe are tuning in and thinking, what is an SDR? I've heard a lot about it. Really, it's a radio communication system where components that have traditionally been implemented in hardware, so that's things like mixers, filters, amplifiers, and modulators, that's all done in software on a computer. And then the challenge for anyone producing an SDR radio receiver, especially over the spectrum that we cover from 1 kilohertz to 2 gigahertz, is how do you protect and present to the computer something it can process sensibly with the firepower that today's computers typically have. All our RSPs, and this is the simplest entry-level product, the Rsp 1A, have at the heart of it the Myrix technology that I mentioned, which at the heart of it is this 14-bit analog to digital converter, and USB, which connects everything with the computer. And a lot of work goes into many passband filters such that you minimize the impact of strong signals out of band causing problems for the signal you want. On top of that, the world is full of very strong interferers like medium wave transmitters, FM broadcast transmitters, and DAB transmitters. So again, to stop problems or minimize problems with those, we've built in some serious notch filters. So unless you actually want to listen to those bands, in which case it's fine, for when you're tuning into other frequencies, it notches them out with a 40 or 50 dBs of attenuation. Actually, a common problem we have, Gary, is that sometimes people say, well, your radio seems okay, but I can't pick up any FM stations. And we say, have you accidentally clicked on the FM notch filter? That's how good those are. So we have the 3 products in the range, from the 1A through to the DX and the Duo, and things glued together with our own Sdr Uno Windows-based software, which I'll be talking a bit more about in a minute, and giving a demo. As will I demonstrate the ham band framing, which is something we're very proud of. And this is great for newcomers to SDR because it replicates the familiar buttons you'd have on a traditional ham radio with, 20-meter button, and then it sorts out all the settings needed to just display the part of the spectrum that you want to see, which in this case is the 20-meter band. So the 1A, the entry-level product, and as with all these RSPs, you get 10 megahertz visibility all the way from 1 kilohertz up to 2 gigahertz. As well as the Sdr Uno software. For those of you on other platforms, there's other software. There's a spectrum analyzer software, a GNU radio source box, the Raspberry Pi image that you can download. And a lot of people are just interested in embellishing their existing or smaller transceiver with a really big HD display. And of course, that's just using it as a pan adapter. And really, the Rsp 1A is adequate if you're only going to do that and not kind of move into some of the other capabilities that the other products bring. Just showing here the GNU radio capability. This is really popular with youngsters. So if you've got, with Christmas coming, youngsters who are into computing and showing a bit of interest in radio, rather than kind of boring them with 80-meter nets and trying to attract them that way, showing that they can actually put together their own software architecture around a decent SDR receiver. GNU radio is something that we're seeing more and more of the younger newcomers to radio getting interested in. Those of you who are into really wanting to do detailed measurements, then we have with Sdr Uno calibrated power levels. So you can even make a log to a CSV file and chart it. And this is great for tracking down EMC. And I think those guys where was it BT took 18 months to identify a problem this week with supposedly a rogue TV emitting a problem. If only someone had had an RSP nearby, they'd have soon seen what was going on. This is how the spectrum analyzer software looks. And going up to the RSP DX, the key thing here is you have multiple antenna ports. And this is a real advantage if you want to spin the dial from, HF up to VHF and so on, where probably you really want different antennas and you don't want to be forever disconnecting and connecting. Well, you can have 3 antennas here and they're all software selectable. The BNC socket is limited to 200 megahertz at the top, just purely due to the interface circuitry behind it. We've added enhanced performance for below 2 megahertz, so that's interesting for the VLF people, where there are additional hardware features that are included with this high dynamic range mode. So at the top of the range, we have the Rsp Duo, which is getting more and more interest, because not only can you look at 10 megahertz of spectrum anywhere from 1 kilohertz to 2 gigahertz, you can simultaneously be down on HF and up on UHF, should you want to. And there's a lot of things you can do with this. You can you can actually compare two antennas in real time simultaneously to see how the signals compare. There's also the possibility of doing noise reduction and signal enhancing with diversity. So that's another thing. Let me just, I'm going to move on to a live demo in a moment, but this is just another example of a screenshot of having the two instances of Sdr Uno running simultaneously. Here we've got an example with 7 megs on one and up on the aircraft band with another. Some people enjoy listening to the air traffic control on 120 megs and decoding the telemetry signaling up on 1.09 gigahertz from the ADS-B signals. A little bit more here about the diversity. We've got this rosette within Sdr Uno that allows you to independently change the amplitude and gain between the two signals for diversity enhancement. And then for cancelling local interference, you can have two antennas. One of them has the wanted signal, so that's probably your best antenna. You might connect that to your beam. And then the other antenna is perhaps, a simpler antenna, which is also picking up the interference that you're trying to get rid of. And then by controlling the diversity control here, you can actually pull out of the noise this signal that was otherwise almost unintelligible. There's a comparison chart on the SDR Play website that helps you compare what you're getting with each of the different models. But the biggest news in the last month or so is the upgrade to Sdr Uno version 1.4, which has a bunch of new additions, which I won't go through here. But the biggest addition is a plugin system, which is starting to get a lot of attention. And if you want to know more about the plugin system, just go to sdrplay.com/plugins, where you'll see more details of the currently available plugins. And it's early days; we're just starting out. But to get things going, we provided 3 plugins which you get downloaded with the release. And I'll demonstrate one of these in a minute, which is the DX Cluster plugin, which is very cool. There's also third-party plugins coming, and there's a thing called a frequency annotator plugin, a little bit like the DX Cluster, but instead of using a DX Cluster, this uses a memory database index of all broadcast stations. So this works better if the stations are persisting, unlike amateur stations that are popping up and coming and going. But as I say, I'll show the DX Cluster in a moment. And I can't move on without just waving the flag for what came out last year, but people are still coming across it and thinking, wow. And that's our scanning function, which really is, I think, we're the only SDR software to include an embedded integrated scanning function. And this really gives you the kind of capability you get with handheld scanners. So again, if you're a radio amateur and you want something that's good for just general coverage receiver, for pan adapter, for monitoring another band while you're active on a different band, then you decide you'd like to start exploring scanning aircraft bands, for example. You've got that in Sdr Uno, and the ability to set up a start and stop frequency, the step interval, how long you want to hold on any station that you come across. You can set this threshold so that it's not too sensitive and you just get it to where you want it. And you can choose to either wait on the signal or just move on after the time set up there. You can save the frequencies where you find stuff into a memory panel for future use. And you could also put it in a continuous loop. So just a quick shout out for the scanning program. And now, one of the things we're always asked, Gary, and I know you keep bugging me about this, is yes, we are very aware of a growing demand for operation on other platforms of Windows. Just a little bit about Sdr Uno, Gary. We inherited it, well, we acquired it about 4 years ago from Sdr, it was called Studio One. And back then, I think you had to pay $169. You got a dongle, and that was your license to prove that you could use it. And, you know, it was pretty popular. But we actually took it over and decided to bundle it as an offering for our RSPs, because it allowed us to tailor the software to bring out the best performance in the hardware. So things like the HDR mode for the RSP DX and some of the other coming hardware features really require Sdr Uno, and Sdr Uno can get that ultimate performance out of the box. So that was a Windows implementation, and we've been actually working for nearly a year now at the migration. It's going on in the background. There's a lot to do. There's a lot more to do, but it is on the horizon. I know we always say it's about a year away. We're getting a bit closer to it. We never commit timescales because it's really a combination of how much resource we've got after all the other support, which is always a priority for us. But here is our roadmap taking us to, let me just, taking us to, let's just get the laser pointer up here, taking us to version 2.0, which will be cross-platform for Windows, Mac, and Linux. So that's out in time, but along the way to that, there's 3 more incremental updates. There's 1.41, and the big deal there will be this scheduling function. At the moment, you can record the whole sort of IQ spectrum. You can record a particular audio frequency, but you can't kind of set up multiple future sessions. And this will be a proper scheduling function. The big thing about 1.42 that should come soon after that is an updated TCP server. At the moment, and it is a criticism, people say, well, hang on a minute, you've got this lovely Raspberry Pi software. It works great if someone's got software that supports an XTIO interface. So back at home, you may have this remote over the internet Raspberry Pi, very low cost RSP plus Raspberry Pi, fantastic low noise environment with your own antennas. You can remote into it, but only from either the very old version of Sdr Uno 1.22 or other software such as HDSDR that supports an XTIO interface. And as yet, you can't with Sdr Uno. That will come with 1.42, and that's there's quite a bit of work going on to make sure that that works really smoothly. Because I mean, some of you are familiar with Sdr Console, works great already, but obviously Sdr Console doesn't support a remote. You have to have a Windows platform at the other end running console. By the way, Gary, there's something that only popped up a couple of weeks ago, is the this virtual link software for being able to do a LAN connection. So within your own home, if you've got a remote setup over your own LAN, you can. There's some really cool software. Check out our website, which is virtual. It's called Virtual USB, and it allows you to anywhere on your LAN have another like a Raspberry Pi running this software. So that's a good short-term gap for the for the LAN, but we need to fix that for the WAN. 1.43 will have a whole bunch of custom controls that people have been asking us for, and then we'll get to version 2. Anyway, I'm very aware, Gary, I'm probably talking too much here, so let's move on to look at the demo. I've just got Sdr Uno running. This is how it would typically launch up. I've actually got it connected at the moment to an Rsp Duo, but just using it in the single tuner mode. And here we are on 80 meters.
And it can cause quite a few problems. Go ahead.
And I was just going to demonstrate a couple of things here. So firstly, for people who haven't come across Sdr Uno before, this is the default layout you get. So you get a main window, you get the virtual receiver, and you can have multiple versions of this, all set to different frequencies within a 10 megahertz spectrum. You've got a recording function, the scanner that I mentioned. So if you just click on the scanner config, you see the box comes up that I showed you before. But here are the band buttons I mentioned. So if you go on to bands, you'll see there's ham upper, ham lower, and broadcast bands. So let's go on ham lower and pick the 80 meter band. Oh, sorry, the 20 meter band. For example, you'll see it frames the band from 14 megahertz at the bottom up to 14.35. This is up at the top here. So you didn't have to worry about setting up the all the settings in terms of what IF frequency to use and stuff like that. It already sets up for you the fact that it needs to be an upper side band, and the band's not particularly active. FT8 down there. On 40.
Canada, Delta, Xavier.
Sorry. The audio to this is quite a lot louder than you are, by the way. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I don't want to blast any listeners' ears out.
Right. Shall I just do that bit again then? Do you think?
Yeah. Okay. Just keep the volume. Sorry.
Yeah. No. That's fine. Let's just test the volume before I restart. Okay, that's still a lot louder. Is that sort of similar now?
A little less than that.
Okay. How about that? Is that sort of similar now?
That's a little bit quieter than you are, so that's better.
That's probably better, isn't it?
Yeah.
But they could hear it if I stop talking.
Yeah, and the digital squawk and the that sort of stuff is horrid.
Oh yeah, maybe I am.
Sorry to take you off of your flow.
No, that's fine. Let me.
And hopefully should manage to get that sorted
okay.
out. And I'll catch up with everybody.
Right. Shall we start again then?
You can start from here, so you can do the demo from here.
Do I need to do something to tell? So when you're editing, you find it. Or will you have?
Well, what we can do is this. There you go.
Okay. Right, so I'd like to give a quick live demo now of Sdr Uno in action. This is what comes up when you launch Sdr Uno, the default setting with a main window up in the top left-hand corner, and a VRX, a receive panel here, which has the band buttons I mentioned earlier, and a main spectrum display with the waterfall below. So let's make it active by pressing play. I've already selected from the bands button the ham lower bands, and I've clicked on 80 meters, and I'm going to press play. And interestingly, you'll see, so the band is framed from 3.5. We actually go to 4 megs because there's quite a few people who like to listen to US DX and so on, which is up above the 3.8 that we're limited to here in the UK. The other interesting thing here is it's a brilliant demo of how much pollution we get from the VDSL broadband signals, and that's this step here. And many of you may have read in Radcom how the RSGB are trying to fight to get something done about this. Anyway, here we are. Again, for those who haven't seen an SDR in action before, this really shows, rather than spinning the dial to find the signals, you see them visually. Here's another one.
83 degrees elevation.
And so that's really a basic demo of Sdr Uno in its default operation. I'll click on another band. Let's pick 40 meters. And
Alpha 6, Oscar Hotel Alpha in the Worthing District, Amateur Radio Club, 40 meter net. You copy over?
Lots of signals there, and again you can see the band is nicely framed from 7 to 7.3 megahertz. So right, the big thing with version 1.4 is the plugin system, and you'll notice also, whoops, that at the top of the screen here there's this plugins box which auto loads when you start up. If your configuration doesn't have it, you can always click on the plugins button here, and that will just create this panel as another window. And let me just stop that for a minute. I'm going to show you now the DX Cluster plugin. So you click on DX Cluster and load plugins, and another window pops up, which you can see here. You have to have a call sign or registered SWL number to be allowed to log into these DX clusters. DX clusters are really just a collection of computers. It goes back a long way, actually, when it was all text-based around Telnet, where amateurs around the world would share details of stations they had just heard, DX stations, and what the frequency was. And now that's all connected. And what this DX cluster plugin allows you to do is actually map those call signs onto your spectrum display. So obviously, because these are radio hams that come and go, and some of them may not be there for that long, it doesn't make sense to have the information there for very long, and you can set how long you'd like it to be there. I've set it for 5 minutes, but you might want 20 minutes or so on. For this demo, 5 minutes will be fine. So then you set it going, and now, and I've just gone to this GB7 BAA, which is a common point of entry to the worldwide DX cluster system, but they're all pretty much connected together. And oh, I need to press play. Common error. And you'll see here it's got the status. It's now running, and it's just telling me it's picking up all the newly added stations since I press play. So it's literally 10 seconds worth. There's 2, and in fact one of them happens by good luck to be on the 40-meter band. So someone somewhere in the world has put EA3 URL, the fact that that station is active just at just below 7.060. I suspect that's a CW station. Now, whether or not we can actually now hear that station that really depends on propagation and all the other good stuff. That would be probably a bit too much to ask. But the important thing is that the cluster system will give you this very nice picture reading, and there are settings here where you can set the baseline for these to appear, because if there's a contest on, this soon gets peppered with a tremendous number of signals. So that's this is one of the plugins we developed ourselves just to demonstrate the principle, and even since we launched this a month ago, the frequency annotation plugin has been provided by a third party, and I can just go across to our whoops. And like I say, plugins is very much part of our community as people, third parties, start to add their own plugins. You'll see all the information about, there's a DAB plugin, the cluster plugin, the audio recorder plugin, and then these third-party plugins have just started. There's a plugin for the contour shuttle, which Martin Lynch sells. Very popular, isn't it? I think, Gary. Yeah. And there's also this frequency annotation plugin that's there already. And we expect over the coming weeks for more and more plugins to be added. Okay, so that's all I was going to demonstrate at this point. So I was going to just move on and just wrap up with a couple more comments here, Gary. Just bring it up.
Might want to turn the audio off to the
that's a very good. I just realised that. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, just one more comment about particularly the Rsp 1A, because it's a very affordable product. If you're trying to attract youngsters or even returning hams who are getting bored and want something to do, I mean, the Rsp 1A is a great at a great price point at around £100. Okay, and as well as all this amateur stuff, there's a lot of as well as traditional ham radio, there's a lot of other things like satellite monitoring and downloading high resolution pictures, which I just want to mention. Actually, before that, there's a couple of pictures here, Gary, of in use as a pan adapter. Again, for those who perhaps not familiar with SDRs, you can have your Sdr Uno configured to match the frequency that you're dialing on your traditional transceiver. And we have good interfaces to all the popular transceivers to enhance them. There's the TR switch needed in the case of the older transceivers. That's a Kenwood example. But yeah, just talking about other applications that really are getting people excited. In Marsat, I mean, you can monitor some really interesting signals coming from ships at sea. And just with a simple L-band antenna, you can pick up the fact that we go up to 2 gigahertz means these bands are also open. This is an example of 3 things going on at once. And this, again, this would work with an Rsp 1A, where you have WSTJ, FT8 activity on, say, a couple of the receivers, and you're doing some kind of slow scan TV on another. Mentioned high resolution downloads. Well, there are these geological survey satellites, which you can actually double click down and blow up and see hurricanes as they move. You can see the fires in California sometimes where there's a lot of smoke. It's real-time passes of the satellite, and then you download and can post-process the images that you get. And a lot of people are doing that. And if you go to USA Satcom, they've written the software specifically for the RSPs to allow it to work with them. Just a little bit about support. Now, obviously, you get great support from Gary initially, but anything where you have more detailed technical questions, or Gary, you can't get a hold of Gary, you could always come to our website. There's videos, there's an applications and support catalog with a searchable index on many, many topics with links to our own videos, to third-party videos. There's a Facebook group where we post news, SDR Play, and there are the forums, and these are really impressive. Particularly the Facebook group. It's now over 14,000 people, Gary. I mean, it's and growing. And Facebook's great if you're happy to go on Facebook, but actually, if you want a quick diversity of answers, you post your question, and without exception, really, you get multiple comments and very, very helpful people there come back with advice and suggestions. The downside is you kind of know that you've seen some really good stuff on there, and it is pretty hard to sort of go back through their search system and easily find stuff. So some people prefer the other types of forum. There's sdrplayusers.net. But growing in popularity this year is a groups.io forum, which that's starting to become a kind of go-to place. And the nice thing there, if you don't mind hundreds of emails and you can, siphon them off somewhere separate, then that's another alternative. But like I say, we do have one-to-one help available. We've just upgraded the help system. And here's a sort of example of it. You go to help, sdrplay.com/help. There's a technical help button, and we do ask you just to say which platform you're on, which software you're using, because we've prepared quite a few FAQs, which really do tackle the vast majority of the problems people have. Like, I've got no signal, no devices found. And then there's some very common questions which include all these things, and we address a lot of those with separate comments. But look, at the end of the day, if you're struggling or you can't understand stuff, we're there to help. And then you click here, raise a ticket, and believe me, once that ticket is raised, all of us in the team take turns and are on duty to answer questions and get responses as quickly as possible. I mean, we always say within 24 hours, and it's often a lot quicker than that. So behind ML&S, you've got SDR Play standing by the products to help, and really, really good. So yeah. What happened?
Sorry.
Okay.
Shouting next to me.
Well, I don't think it matters. I mean, that's
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry. So, well, if you just go back to you can purchase from what that's it.
Yeah. So you can get. I think you've got stock of all our products, right, Gary? So
yeah, we've got lots. Yeah.
And you can buy from Martin Lynch, and we will back up Gary with any support you need. So
brilliant. Well, thanks for that, John. That was really, really interesting. There was quite a lot of information on there I didn't actually know. So it's always a bit of a learning curve. There were a couple of little things in there as well, I think, that I had a couple of questions for. And one of the things was John Powell was actually asking whether on the scanning sort of function, will it actually sort of tot up hits for any one particular frequency? So if you're scanning, say, 10 frequencies, that it might actually like tot up, one frequency has had like, say, 6 hits, and that sort of thing. He wanted like,
almost like no, at the moment That's an
I think I did
interesting idea.
see.
Yeah.
I think I did actually see some kind of login statistics login in one of your roadmap entries. So
Yes, I think
that
that's something that we've heard requested. At the moment, it's basically just once it's found it, it's added it, and
yeah.
that's the end of it.
And the other thing I was going to ask is there's one of the things that pops up from time to time is actually I just saw one part you were going to bring out the ability to actually connect via TCP or like network type stuff. Is that possible to set up, say, through something like a VPN, like say Soft Ether or whatever it's called these days? Or is there any plans to, maybe one day produce an SDR Play RSP box with, say, an Ethernet port on it, which seems to be the way quite a lot of SDRs are going?
Yeah, that's certainly something we're talking about. We're thinking about. We haven't got any firm plans yet, but you're right, Gary. That would be a definite boost, maybe to a higher end product at some point.
Yeah. Okay. The other thing as well, I saw that you were talking about the GO 17 satellite. Now, I have one of our customers had actually asked about this satellite, and when I did a little bit of research into it, I wasn't particularly 100% sure whether or not that is something that would work in the UK. Now, is that possible in the UK, the GO 17 satellite?
Oh gosh,
You're not sure?
I'm not sure. That's a very good question, Gary. You got me up on the hop there, but no, that's fair comment.
I couldn't get it to any hard information on that, but that's no worries. As I say, and you also covered, I had a couple of questions down there regards to sort of pan adapter, because obviously some people do actually see that it can be used as a pan adapter and don't realize actually there's an interface of some description that is often needed. Not every radio has an IF out, or if there's an IF out, it can be quite narrow bandwidth.
Yes, that's right. So if you just, because there's two things really with pan adapters. The most important thing is to not blow up your SDR, and our SDR, like with all the others, it can't handle big RF levels, and it just fries the delicate, components at the front end.
I mean, we've seen our fair share of those sort of come through,
and the modern transceivers with an RF out for a second receiver, they're great because they've engineered it all for you. The older ones, or even some of the new ones that have IF out, but you're kind of a bit limited, as you say. You only see the pass band of the IF, so you're not enjoying the whole of that, even one ammeter band.
Okay,
so
I mean, obviously, one of the sort of like the most popular products, I think, has probably been the MFJ. I think it was
1708.
Something like that. The B SDR. That's always very popular, but it is sort of like a bit of a compromise in that you do get some signal losses if you're maybe talking about the higher bands, certainly. And it's not perfect, but it is a solution quite often for those that can't get any other way of actually doing it.
Yeah.
So, but the other question I was going to ask as well was when you were sort of saying that in version 2 of the software in the roadmap, I did notice that there was some talk about there was going to be, I mean, I keep asking about Mac support in particular, or say Linux support, but obviously now Mac is now going over to a different type of silicon, and maybe it's all going to be ARM based, and that's going to move away from the x86 platform. Is that going to be a
we initially, I think we panicked a bit when we first saw that news, because it's like, oh my goodness, what we're doing will not obviously isn't geared up for that. But what we've read, it looks like in terms of ongoing support by Apple for the current architectures, going to be there for years. It won't be like, I mean, a year after they brought out Windows 10 and trying to pull the plug on Windows 7. I don't think it'll be like that. It's going to be quite a long legacy supported architecture. But you're right, long term. Hey, you're right.
I mean, I'm trying to cover all the questions.
No, that's a good one.
you know. So
you're good, Gary. You're touching on the sort of stuff
I know.
internally. So
I'm used to it now. It's if there's a question I don't ask, I'll guarantee someone will. So it's good. Anyway, look, I think pretty much we've got everything. I think it's been quite interesting, and as I say, I've learned quite a lot from some of the things, especially about the sort of add-ons. It's sort of something I've not used with Sdr Uno. So brilliant. Thank you very much for your time today. I know it's been quite difficult in the shop with people walking past.
That's fine. But
it's great. And Skype calls popping up in the middle. We'll work that out, by the way, for you. All right. So, but okay. It's quite difficult when the shop's busy and stuff. So excellent. But thanks again for doing this, and I think it's been very
good. Well, thanks again. Really appreciate it.
No worries.
It's great fun, and hi to everybody watching. Bye.
Excellent. Okay, stay safe. Thanks very much. Cheers, John.